Well, I am literally under the volcano today. There are only flames around me, and I'm being sucked to the heart of the volcano. So, this is what we do when we are presented with some groundbreaking and explosive intel.
This is transition protocol. It is the 11th of August. The tectonic plates underneath the volcano keeps shifting, putting up a lot of smoke, very hot air in the air, up in the atmosphere, and we have been hard at work trying to gather all of that uh, deep inside the rooms where decisions are being made, deeply sourced, verified to the extent that we have the ability to do so, and we believe what we bring to you is as close to being accurate as possible. With me is my dear friend and colleague, a geopolitical analyst of global reputation. You like him, you love him, Pepe Escobar. We'll be discussing all of this news with you and breaking it to the world. And we believe information that you have not heard anywhere else, certainly not in corporate media, and certainly not in independent media because they lack the access. And we are honored to have it. This is Transition Protocol. If you like what we do, hit the like, subscribe button, go to our Substack channel for a small fee of $5 a month. Twice a week, we will deliver news of this quality inside your mailbox. Pepe, please go ahead and enlighten us and the global audience of the breaking news that we are privileged to have.
Thank you, Mr. Z. Thanks, everybody, our growing global audience. Well, I am literally under the volcano today. There are only flames around me, and I'm being sucked to the heart of the volcano. So, this is what we do when we are presented with some groundbreaking and explosive intel. Some cases, one source, some cases, there's another source corroborating the first. In this case, a very privileged source. And of course, it's practically impossible to confirm some of the aspects of this intel, considering how explosive the material is. So, once again, I think this is becoming a habit between us. I usually get intel reports 5 minutes before we go live on air. 3 minutes, 1 minute, sometimes 10 minutes. If the fates or if Zeus is not throwing a dart over my head. So okay, we have to live with it, right? It's part of our job. What I'm going to tell you has not been directly confirmed with the highest levels of the Iranian government. Point number one. It can be confirmed over the next 24, 48 hours until the rest of the week. There are two possibilities. They may go for a non-response, which is what they usually do when we are dealing to extremely sensitive matters of national security for Iran. Or they can always say, no, that's not true. In the case of what we have, we're not going to get an option to no, it's not true, but we can get a no response, which is something that already happened with me 2 months ago when I submitted something that we revealed here at Transition Protocol. And a very important character close to the office of leader Mojtaba Khamenei, he basically said, I cannot comment on this matter. But this was not a denial. And this was not a non-response. It was a response basically saying, no, we cannot talk about this. And the Iranian government is very, very uh, demonstrative when they prefer to have issues of national security outside of the public sphere, and not even very well connected Iranian media reports about it. This may be the case considering parts of the intel that we received. It concerns essentially a meeting, a direct meeting between President Pezeshkian and leader Mojtaba Khamenei, which might have lasted no less than 6 hours, a face to face meeting. Essentially, the intel is trying to tell us that Pezeshkian presented a very clear case to leader Mojtaba Khamenei on how, let's put it, the no peace, no war environment vis-a-vis the United States should proceed from now on. Simultaneously with this very, very long conversation between the president and the leader, and we have to understand probably the fundamental fact. Mojtaba Khamenei, from the beginning, when he was still the son of Ayatollah Khamenei, he never believed in negotiations with the Americans. In the, let's say, the period that he was the invisible new supreme leader, and he was basically sending a few messages. And there were some leaks in the Iranian media about meetings that he had with members of the Supreme National Security Council. It was more or less clear that his initial instinctive reaction to dealing with the Americans was correct, because the Americans basically blew up the Memorandum of Understanding, as all of you know. We here followed this story at Transition Protocol in detail. Many other of our colleagues in the internet spheres, not only sphere. But now there's got to be some sort of rearrangement at the top of the Iranian government, because they are entering a new phase. And this new phase, we could characterize it as the negotiation endgame. It's not there yet. It's maybe the path towards the negotiation endgame. But for that, the Iranian government as a whole has to be a very solid negotiation path. And this is what may have been achieved this last 24 hours, not even for this last 24 hours, between the leader, the president, and others that are part of this negotiation, of course. And we would include Foreign Minister Arakshi, we would include Leader of Parliament Ghalibaf, and of course, all the other members of the Supreme National Security Council, whose secretary now, from now on, is a towering figure, to say the least, Mohsen Rezaei. Mohsen Rezaei is a veteran of the Iran-Iraq War. He's a former commander of the IRGC, and now he is the top military advisor to leader Mojtaba Khamenei, and he is the, let's say, the key organizer of everything that is discussed at the Supreme National Security Council, of which, by the way, President Pezeshkian is also a member. So we have a series of developments happening more or less at the same time, although they are all interconnected. And that's what makes, for people who don't understand how the Iranian system works, makes it's practically impossible to understand how they connect to each other and who are the main characters, and if there is a change in the path towards something or in the procedure of their decision making, it's very hard for anybody outside of the ruling circle to understand what goes on, especially foreigners. So we have a series of concentric facts now. As a very, very substantial change at the Supreme National Security Council, when Mohsen Rezaei now is the big guy with no competition. They are discussing a mechanism for reparations, which is going to be a Sisyphean task. The Trump administration will never agree to pay reparations to Iran, but this is presented on the table, and it's part of, as the Iranians interpret it, is part of the MOU. We can detect and this is quite subjective, but there are elements that suggest that the Iranian negotiating strategy is more flexible now because at the highest level, they not only have a consensus, but they more or less understood and devised the new procedure from now on. They're, uh, they refined their strategy to the point of okay, this is what we really want, this is what we are presenting, and this is how we're going to act to for these things to be delivered to us, concrete results. Then there are some details which are quite fascinating. In fact, considering the scope of the Iran Pakistan relation, which has to be at all times a relation based on trust, especially now when you have a new element, an explosive, theoretically explosive element in the chessboard, which is the Mecca NATO style pact between Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, which, by the way, was communicated to Iran beforehand by the Pakistanis. This is very, very important, which proves the trustworthy relationship. And then there's something that might be happening by the end of this week on August 14th, Friday, actually. And it was postponed. It's going to happen after that. August 14th is Pakistan's Independence Day. And this is something we reported 2 weeks ago or so, like, a little over a week ago, if I remember well, that a delegation led by Ghalibaf would visit Islamabad on August 14th. And who could probably stay for 2 days because August 16 is one of those deadlines that disappear in the fog of war, but they are still there. It's the end of the 60-day period of the MOU negotiations, which were blown up by the United States. But the timeline still remains in place. It's August 16th. By August 16th, they should have reached some sort of agreement. The problem is the Americans blew it all up. So, is this Iranian delegation led by Ghalibaf going to visit Islamabad soon? Yes, but after August 14th. So, we have this interlocked. Uh, at the highest levels of the Iranian government, they are moving personnel around and it's coalescing into a very solid, decisive negotiating position with very identifiable players, of which we can say that arguably the most powerful now is Mohsen Rezaei. And in fact, his experience compared to everybody else, it's on a whole new level. And very, very important, he has an excellent relationship with Mojtaba himself because they have been talking for decades, in fact, when Mojtaba was the son of Ayatollah Khamenei, but he was the key bridge between his dad, who could not follow all dossiers at the same time, and the IRGC. The key bridge between Ayatollah Khamenei and the IRGC was his son Mojtaba Khamenei. And one of his top interlocutors was always Mohsen Rezaei. So this is a relationship of deep, deep trust. So, okay, we can ask a question rhetorically to all of you, our audience. Is Tehran prepared to show flexibility on reparations and on the negotiations with the Americans? The Pakistanis and the Qataris, in their conversations with the Iranians, are saying or are suggesting show a little, just a little more flexibility, Persian style, very sophisticated, as only the Iranians can do it. And of course, the Iranians understood the message. Is this some form of a mechanism to induce Trump into committing some extra mistakes apart from the ones he usually does? No, it's in good faith because, once again, coming back to this possible 6 hour conversation between Pezeshkian and Mojtaba, when Pezeshkian was trying to impress to the leader, okay, let's give one more chance to the negotiations, but under our terms. We set the agenda, we set the tone, and we set the terms. And let's see how the Americans react. Obviously, Mojtaba could not say no to something like this, even though he doesn't believe in any possibility of negotiating with the Americans. So, one of the conclusions that we could reach based on this intel is that Tehran, the highest levels of the Iranian government now, it's not only a matter of just negotiating an agreement or coming back to renegotiate, no, to negotiate the MOU because the negotiation itself never started. And this assuming that the Americans would be willing to start actually to fulfill the commitments to the MOU that they signed. If we follow the rhetoric coming from War-a-Lago and Washington together, not to mention True Social posts, there is less than zero chance in heaven, hell, and purgatory that Trump will ever fulfill any commitment to the MOU. But hope springs eternal, like all of you know. And obviously, the Iranians are perhaps relatively inclined to give it another chance, as long as they keep their strategy. And that's the most important thing. And this is what all of us will have to pay attention from now on. How the negotiating strategy of Tehran is going to change from now on. Substantially, are they going to press specific points of the MOU? Are they going to stop telling Trump to behave and just listen and without reacting to all the vociferations? Are they going to come up with new facts on the ground, and that means on the grounds and on the skies and all across the Persian Gulf, all the way to Iraq, all the way to Jordan, etc. Irrefutable facts of war. Nobody knows for sure at the moment. So, one thing that we can, and once again, none of that has been officially confirmed by the office of Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei. This is based on the privileged source that we have that has access to the office of the Supreme Leader and can, with, I would say, a high degree of certainty, transmit intel from the highest levels of the Iranian government, but also knowing that if this intel goes public, it's an enormous problem for him as a source and as a member of the whole system. And it may not be in the interest of the Iranian government to have this information out. So, what we are presenting to you is take it as a possible, plausible, very solid scenario of what may be happening from now on in terms of a solidified Iranian strategy that may be substantially different from what we had so far. This is a diplomatic way of presenting what we have. The fact that we have this new IRGC command, the fact that we have at least 6 people at the highest levels in new positions, the fact that the command apparatus behind the negotiators seems to be very, very solid, these are all, this is evidence for all of us that, yes, something very substantial is changing at the very top, but we still don't know the repercussions. It's too early to tell. So this is not only about deterrence. So this is how Iran is going to solidify its newfound status of being a top power in West Asia, a top power across Eurasia, and a top emerging power all across the global south, which is the new status of Iran nowadays. So, Mohsen Rezaei, does he fit this pattern that I'm trying to describe to all of you? Of course, because not only he is now the secretary of the Supreme National Security Council with a direct line in every aspect, not to mention face to face with Mojtaba, but, and this came from leader Mojtaba himself, he has a second mandate. He is the supreme leader's personal representative. So from now on, when you see Mohsen Rezaei, let's say on X, Twitter X, for instance, saying something, this is the voice of Mojtaba Khamenei himself. So we are on a whole new level in terms of respectability and in terms of authority by Mohsen Rezaei. And when he's saying something, this is the official position at the highest levels of the Iranian government. Pezeshkian comes out of this reshuffle in a very strong position as well, like exercising his presidential authority. And at the same time, Mojtaba listening to him and listening to the way he proposes that the negotiation from now on should be conducted. And this is important because Pezeshkian's position is not necessarily, and I'm putting it diplomatically, the position of the streets in Iran, which are adverse to any negotiation with the Americans, and not necessarily, and certainly has nothing to do with the position of some, let's say, more aggressive members at the highest level of the IRGC. So, this new IRGC, what is it? Well, it's a new style IRGC with military institutional authority to do literally everything that they want to do, and authorized directly by the supreme leader via IRGC stalwart Mohsen Rezaei. So, Security Command has been reorganized. Yes, the Security Command has already been reorganized with the appointment of these six very, very important figures. So there is an element that I am particularly fascinated by is this possible visit of a Pakistani delegation to Tehran after August 14th, so and even after this deadline that's still there, August 16th. So this is something that might happen, let's say, early next week or mid next week. Depending on what happens during this Galibaf visit, and of course, he's going to talk to everybody, including Mohsen Rezaei, and possibly Galibaf will meet with the supreme leader himself. For the moment, we already have an architecture that it's solidifying itself. So, and there is a division of labor, which is quite significant. Oman is taking care of the maritime, let's say maritime implementation is a very diplomatic way of saying, but Oman is suggesting, which is something that they spent days discussing with the Iranians, this temporary technical agreement on the navigation in the Strait of Hormuz, the Iranian channel in the north, the Omani channel in the south, but basically Iran controls everything in the northern channel and possibly 50% of the southern channel via Oman. This deal is practically clinched. It's something that could be signed until the end of this week or by early next week. Qatar, as we already knew, and this keeps going on, is, well, they support diplomacy in the background. This means they support diplomacy by Oman and Pakistan, essentially. And of course, they will have to supervise the money. If follow the money, if there's any money following to Iranian accounts in the next few days, this is due to a great extent to the role of Qatar and Qatari banks. Very, very important. And of course, there's the role of Pakistan, which gets more and more complex day after day. Because the Pakistanis, they have to deal with literally everyone and his neighbor, and especially his neighbor. The Americans, Iranians, Qatar, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, but literally everybody. But, every grain of sand in the old and the new Silk Road, China, obviously. So they have to deal with everything. I don't know how they do it. Nobody knows how they do it. But, hats off to the hard work that they are putting on. No question about that. But Pakistan, there's something quite interesting that merits a more detailed analysis. Pakistan's defense minister, he said something in the public record, which is enormous responsibility. Basically saying that Washington and Tehran are approaching an arrangement. No details. What kind of arrangement? Does that mean that the Americans are going back to the MOU? No. There's no evidence supporting that as it stands. And of course, the most complicated aspect is even if Pakistan continues to have this mediator, the messenger role, now Pakistan is directly involved in an extremely complicated and still quite murky deal. I call it the Sunni NATO deal signed in Mecca with Saudi Arabia and Turkey. I'm sure all of you have heard all sorts of possible scenarios about what kind of monster is this, or what kind of figment of somebody's imagination is this? Is this real? Is this fiction? Is this a PR operation, etc.? So we have three unreliable facts altogether in the same side of the chessboard. We have a Muslim Islamic nuclear power. We have the eastern arm of NATO, the second largest NATO army in the world, which is basically in Eurasia territory, all across Anatolia. And we have the theoretical unlimited funds of Saudi Arabia, but maybe they are not so unlimited as many would love to or are betting on. So if you have a NATO style pact between these three, things are getting very, very, very serious. So it can be anything. The official spin, which for the moment has been quite minimalistic, in fact, it's like they signed something and they prefer to ignore it so far. Nobody's making any effort to explain this to, in fact, to the Arab world, to the NATO world, to the global South, to everybody in Eurasia. In fact, a global audience. Is this a pact to prevent Israel from going completely nuts? Possible. Is this a pact against Iran? Not really. And if it was, Iran would simply cut off relations with Pakistan like yesterday. Is this an American side war operation against the axis of resistance? Quite possible. But if Pakistan is into it, they have to be very careful what they're getting into it. Turkey, okay, consider that Turkey is always hedging, considering the neo-Ottoman dreams, considering that the whole, at least 90% of the ruling classes in Turkey, they are Atlanticists, and they are pro-NATO. They are not pro-Eurasia. This is something that you only learn when you spend time in Istanbul and Ankara, over and over again. Is this a pact to save Saudi Arabia from himself? I would love to believe this is quite possible as well. But to have Erdogan and Asim Munir telling MBS, stay, shut up, don't do anything, and we assume responsibility. We are the grown-ups here. We assume responsibility for you. So any possible scenario applies to this Mecca deal, which is still very dodgy, very murky, and this is my personal interpretation. And I give you the right to disagree completely, all of you. But the key fact is that we still don't know what this pact is about in detail. And it's very, very, very dangerous. The fact that we don't have full details about it. So, will this interfere in the possible uh, revamping of the already destroyed communication channels between the US and Iran? No, if Pakistan makes it very clear, especially to the Iranians. And Islamabad answers all of Tehran's questions regarding this pact, which, after all, is a nuclear linked pact. That's why it's so serious. So, this is where we are at the moment. Are we entering a more strategically ambiguous geopolitical phase in terms of the whole chessboard? No question about it. Because we really don't know the repercussions of all these changes when they are interlocked. And what we do know is that the Iranian position is even more solid now than it was 24 or 48 hours ago. Are they in a rush to do any sort of agreement? No. On the contrary. Do they know the timelines constraining the American presidency? Back and forth. It's the best they know. By the way, one of them is right in the middle of this week, the red line concerning the depletion of the American Strategic Petroleum Reserves. It's falling now, this week, as we speak. All the domestic pressures against Trump, all the domestic pressures by the Zionist axis, all the domestic pressures by Trump's donors. The Iranians know everything about all that. So they're not in a hurry. They are watching Trump being consumed in flames by all these accumulated pressures. So, in this particular aspect, Trump, is under the volcano. And obviously, he still refuses the only off ramp for him, which would be to go back to the MOU. Are the Iranians going to give this go back to the MOU to Trump as a favor? Of course not. He's going to have to beg for it. And if he begs for it, he's begging to Pakistan. Once again, there's nowhere else to beg to. He has to beg to Islamabad. Please get me back on the table with these bloody Iranians. And especially now that Iran, with this rearrangement in Tehran, is so much more cohesive and solid, it's going to be much more difficult for the Americans to reach any kind of agreement. Right. So this is more or less, I try to give you a realistic appraisal of some really groundbreaking intel, but we cannot affirm with 100% certainty some of the aspects of this intel. But we can foresee that from now on, the conversation is going to change substantially. The rules of the game, Tehran is tweaking with the rules of the game from now on. And the Americans, I'm not sure the Trump administration understands what they are up against from now on. It's not what they were up against until 24 hours ago. It's a completely different story. And of course, the mediators, Pakistan, Oman, Qatar, they continue to play the game and they are solidifying all their mediating efforts, expecting that the still so small window of opportunity to get this whole thing back on track is still there. But that's when we enter, of course, what our Chinese friends call auspicious territory. And life, as we all know, it's never very auspicious. Life can be a bitch. So, okay, Mr. Z, this is my summary of what we have at the moment. Please jump in, correct me, destroy me, throw me against the wall, anything you feel entitled to. All right? Kick it.
Well,
Thank you.
Pepe, you are my dear friend and colleague. You are a founder of this great channel that is being recognized globally as the purveyor of truth, not varnished by corporate media, not varnished by special interest. And I'm deeply, deeply privileged to be a part of that. And I will never, never, ever throw you under the bus for anything. In fact, I respect you greatly.
Against the
My
wall.
against the wall. Never, never, never will I do that. But in any case, I will offer my interpretation if you will allow me.
Of
Do you,
course. Of course.
yeah, and my interpretation comes from a different place. The audience needs to know that I have the honor of speaking with some of the people in the room. We have said that many times, and that is one of the reasons why we have access to this information that as far as we know, nobody else has. So this is my interpretation. This is not what Pepe may have said to you or the channel says to you. My interpretation. My interpretation is that we reported this on this channel a couple of days ago with Larry that Mojtaba has arisen basically and has taken control. We said that very clearly a couple of days ago, and we see visible signs of that everywhere. We have visibility through our sources with what goes on in very privileged places in Iran. We cannot really say to you exactly where the visibility comes from, but we can say this to you with great confidence that it comes from very near and dear circles. And we see that happening every time we report that. We reported that Mojtaba is back. Mojtaba has come back. We reported that Mohsen Rezaei is ascendant. Mohsen Rezaei became ascendant and occupied a very, very significant place. We reported that Pezeshkian is rising in rank, and his points of view that align with Arakchi are being understood, appreciated by the supreme leader. We see that happening. So we see all of these things, and the reason we see them is because we have access to this information, and we are very honored to have that access and privileged to bring it to you. So now my interpretation is the following. My interpretation is that Trump is on his way out. A big, bold assessment that I will make. He is not going to last in terms of his maximalist pressure that he vociferously, loudly proclaimed out of the White House. That is on his way out, and Iran is ascendant. Another point that I would like to make very clearly, and perhaps for the first time to a global audience, that has not been so emphatically mentioned by my dear colleague because he is much more conservative than I am, is that Pakistan has deliberately adopted a position of strategic ambiguity as far as the nuclear umbrella is concerned, extending to both Turkey and Saudi Arabia. A very, very big thing. This is the first time that this has happened since Pakistan became a nuclear power. Pakistan actually actively went away from extending its nuclear umbrella. But it has now decided by this Mecca Pact to extend that to both Turkey and Saudi Arabia. And I'm told that it shall soon be extended to certain other countries. And one of the countries that our audience will be happy to know that has been invited for discussions is Iran. Big deal. If that happens, really tectonic shift will be more tectonic, even greater tectonic than what we have been talking about. because the animosity between Riyadh and Tehran will begin to gradually dissipate with Pakistan as the glue between them. And this will greatly, significantly alter how the next 50 years are going to be in Eurasia. And of course, behind all of that is China. So I see this playing out. In my view, United States is on its way out of that region. I believe that a deal will be made in the coming week. A big, bold prediction that I'm happy to go out on the limb and make. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But as far as I know, I'm reading the tea leaves correctly. That is where the winds are blowing. Pakistan is expecting a 21 member delegation from Tehran, probably led by Galibaf, probably carrying a mandate from Mojtaba and Mohsen Rezaei, that will put a final points together that allows an agreement to take place, and that would be a strategic defeat of the United States, a humiliation of the malignant toddler that the world will be happy to see in the White House, obviously. This malignant toddler will finally have been put in his box, in his small sandbox that he should be confined to, and that happens at the hands of Iran, extended through Pakistan. A really, really extraordinary event, and I'm happy to say that I'm witnessing signs of that. I'm happy to say that I am confident that this is a fait accompli, uh, not something being negotiated, something already agreed upon, and the final touches are being put in place. And maybe as early as next week, this will come about. Big changes will happen soon thereafter. So that is my take, Pepe.
Okay, so I'll leave it to all of you, our audience. We have complementary points of view, analytical points of view of what's going on now. So we leave the debate to you. So write to us, comments, etc., and keep feeding this debate. Tomorrow we'll be back, the three of us, Mr. Z, Larry, and I, and it will be an excellent opportunity to go over many of your questions since yesterday, with Larry yesterday, with myself today, and tomorrow we can get maybe a bigger picture of how deep this reorganization of the whole chessboard is. So this is my wrap up. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to our global audience. We are deeply grateful to you for supporting us. We have seen enormous commendations coming from all over the globe, and we are so deeply grateful for that. Kindly keep subscribing to us, keep hit the like button. The algorithms like that. And if you would like to support what we do, please go to our Substack channel, same name, Transition Protocol, become a paid member, and this high quality briefing will come to you in your mailbox twice a week. So until tomorrow, thank you very much. Bye bye.
Cheers, everybody. Thank you.